For almost 1,000 years, Selby Abbey has stood here as a true testament to its endurance, because this place, it has survived war, it has survived fire, and it's even survived Henry VIII, and yet here it stands. Now, it often gets overlooked on the tourism radar by its neighbour, York Minster, which funnily enough is younger. However, in recent years it's had an influx of, say, Asian tourists, because this was the wedding venue for a Taiwanese pop star's wedding. But I'm going to have a look at it today because this place is full of stories and it is a magnificent piece of architecture, so much more than just a wedding venue.
12 miles south of York, where the River Ouse moves slow and wide, sits the market town of Selby. A civil parish with a long industrial backbone, shipbuilding, railways and coal once drove its days. A town shaped by labour, water and quiet resilience. Its edges may have changed, but its character runs deep. Because long before the shops, the housing estates and the bypass, this place grew around something older, and it's still standing at its heart today. Selby Abbey is packed with stories, legends and architectural marvels. This isn't just any church. It's seen the birth of a king, a miracle amongst flames, tombs of crusaders and a window thought to have sown seeds in the creation of the US flag. Not bad for a quiet corner of Yorkshire.
Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Claire, this is the Wanderlust way. First off, let me say a massive thank you to everybody that supports this channel by liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing and becoming members and sending super thanks, because everything that you guys are doing is helping the channel to grow. It's allowing me to continue with adventures like this and sharing the stories that I find with you. Okay, so today we are at Selby Abbey in North Yorkshire. Now I want to say a big special thank you to Will, who told me about this place, because he mentioned that there was some stories and it was worth having a look at. So that's what we're doing today. Now I'm a bit ashamed to say that I have visited Selby before. I've even done a little bit of work here in the past, and yet I've always overlooked the Abbey, but not today. So if you are watching from Taiwan, then yes, this is the place where Chou got married. If you are watching from the United States, this is the place that has that stained glass window that is rumoured to be the origin perhaps of your stars and stripes on your flag. So loads of stories to explore here. I cannot wait to have a look inside. So that's enough waffle, let's wander.
The history of Selby Abbey, it reads almost like a fairy tale, because it started with a mystical dream involving 3 swans. Now, as you stood outside, you'll actually notice the 3 swans above my head. There once was a devout French monk named Benedict, who saw a vision of 3 swans gliding together through the mists of a wide, unknown river. Benedict believed this to be a calling from Saint Germain, a divine instruction to found a new monastery at Selby, a place that would be marked by the presence of 3 swans. So he set out on a long and arduous journey from France to England, and, after a few unexpected twists along the way, he finally arrived at a bend on the River Ouse, weary and searching. There he saw them, 3 white swans, just as he had been shown. This was the place, this is where the new abbey was to be founded, and ever since the 3 swans have remained on the abbey arms.
So that is where the story began. From that vision in 1069, which is 3 years after the Norman conquest, William the Conqueror, he was the patronage of Selby Abbey, and it was then that the first foundation stones were laid.
The story goes that when Benedict came ashore, he set up a cross and he prayed. This, of course, attracted the attention of local nobles and eventually the new king, William the Conqueror, who granted him the land around Selby for an abbey and shrine for Saint Germain. But let's get one thing straight. This was no remote outpost. Selby Abbey became one of the very first Benedictine monasteries established in the north after the conquest, a deliberate mark of faith, power and control in newly subdued territory. Its early construction drew on both Anglo-Saxon and Norman influence, and while much of what we see today was shaped by later centuries, echoes of those original stones still remain. What began as a modest monastic church quickly grew into something far more ambitious. Grand, fortified, richly decorated, it became a statement of royal favour, divine purpose and Norman dominance in the north.
Now this is Saint Germain, and he is so important to Selby Abbey because he's really the reason that he's here in the first place. Now if you come, there is a little leaflet that you can pick up, and I've picked one up. It just says Selby Abbey was founded in 1069 and dedicated to our Lord, Our Lady and Saint Germain. And we've just been told that there is a stained glass window at the other side of the church which sort of tells his story, so we'll go and have a little look at that now.
Above the coffee shop section inside Selby Abbey, there is a window which tells the story of Saint Germain, the saint to whom this church is dedicated. Now, one of the panes even shows the vision that inspired the abbey's founding, so that's one to look out for if you can find it. Now, we already know that Selby Abbey was founded in 1069 and that it was said to be Saint Germain who appeared to the French monk Benedict in a dream, urging him to build a monastery here in his name. But what I hadn't realised until I picked up the leaflet during my visit is that Benedict didn't come to Selby empty-handed. He brought with him a rather grisly relic of the saint himself, the middle finger of his right hand. Now, I suppose what we've got to remember is that in medieval times, Germain was a very important saint, he still is today for some people, and churches were dedicated to him all across Europe. And so important that when he died in 448, pilgrims would travel miles to visit his shrine and his body in Auxerre. Now, one day, a somewhat over-enthusiastic, shall we say, pilgrim tried to get a piece of the saint, and they bit off his finger. Now, thankfully, they were caught in the act. The finger was rescued and it was kept safe in a silver reliquary in the sanctuary of the church. The rest of Germain's body was moved beneath the high altar to prevent further desecration. But it was this finger that Benedict carried with him across the channel to Selby. Now, sadly, the finger is long gone now. The leaflet tells me it disappeared at some unknown point in the Abbey's history. But I have to admit, I would absolutely love to know where that finger ended up. I mean, does a relic hunter have it saved in their collection somewhere? Who knows? Perhaps one day it will turn up. This is now the part of the story where it takes a really royal twist, because around 1068, Queen Matilda of Flanders, that's the wife of William the Conqueror, she was believed to have been in the area, possibly overseeing lands granted to her by the crown, and it was during this time she gave birth to her fourth son, Henry. Now, Henry was to be the boy who would one day become Henry I, King of England.
I think it's one of those things that the historians will always argue out about the actual site of the birth. I mean, did it happen at the Abbey? Did it happen nearby? Did it happen in a royal lodge? I don't know. I mean, if you're a local historian and you know more, then obviously feel free to drop some more information in the comments. We'd all love that. But one thing is for sure, Henry was born in Selby, and that is something special. That really puts Selby on the royal history map, shall we say.
The story of Selby Abbey, like so many great churches, is marked not just by what was built, but by what was broken too. For centuries, the Abbey flourished. Between its founding in 1069 and the mid-1500s, it was led by over 30 abbots. Wealth poured in through gifts and land. Monarchs visited. The monastery became one of the richest and most respected in the whole of Yorkshire.
Then came the 1530s, and with it, of course, the dissolution of the monasteries. Henry VIII's forces were sweeping through the country and just dissolving all the monasteries. So there is a little plaque here about it as well. Now, I believe the abbot who was in charge here, he was actually in Henry VIII's favour, because I believe he'd signed something to do with his marriage annulment with Catherine so that he could marry Anne Boleyn. So that put him in a little bit of favour. So that meant that although, all the monks had to leave this Selby, they did get a pension, and he got a pension as well, so it wasn't as bad as it had been in some areas. But there's a little bit here about it. So it says here, Abbot Robert, in favour of the king's divorce from Catherine, he secured a very good pension for himself of £100 a year, which is about 70 grand in today's money. And his prior received £8, which is about 5.5 grand, and most of the remaining 23 monks received between £5 and £6.
Though the monks were treated relatively well, receiving their pensions, etc., the abbey itself was left stripped of its income. And though the great church was spared destruction, its future hung in the balance. For a time it stood empty, a smaller chapel on Church Hill served the parish instead, but in 1618, almost 80 years later, the abbey church was finally adopted as the town's official parish church. This was a new lease of life, but unfortunately the centuries weren't kind. During the Commonwealth period, windows were smashed, statues defaced, and sacred spaces stripped bare. Then, in 1690, the central tower collapsed, crashing down through the heart of the church and destroying the south side. When that was rebuilt, it wasn't with the same grandeur. It was a poor imitation of what had once soared above the abbey.
Just come across this little sign about the central tower. So in 1609 the central tower fell and crushed the south transept. It was rebuilt 100 years later and then was removed in 1902 due to the weight it was placing on the abbey's foundations. Now there's another little bit around and it says, turn around, the wonky arch behind you is a strange shape because the tower's weight caused the abbey to sink. After the fire the abbey was underpinned, meaning it's now secure. So have a look at this, this is really, really unusual. You see it up there? I don't know if it shows you properly on camera, but yeah, it's all wonky. Compare it to the other ones next to it. By the 1700s, entire parts of the abbey were fallen into disrepair, shall we say. I've heard that certain parts of it were being used for storage. It certainly was getting dilapidated and, unusable in areas, dangerous perhaps.
Then came the 19th century and with it revival. A wave of restoration brought brighter days, and for the first time in generations, the church could once again be used in full. The structure was sound, the abbey was whole again.
That is until the moment that the abbey now classes as its darkest day. Just before midnight on the 19th of October 1906, flames were seen ripping their way through this abbey. It was destroyed. The fire quickly spread to the entire roof, which began to fall. The central tower, the nave roof and the choir screen were completely ruined. The bells fell and the lead from the roof tiles melted down the remaining stonework.
Reports say that the verger was alerted, fire brigades rushed to the scene, and the townspeople gathered helplessly in the dark to watch as their beloved abbey burned. As the fire took hold, it is said that many of these locals huddled together in prayer. They prayed for the salvation of the abbey, but not just that, they prayed specifically to its founding saint, Saint Germain. By morning the destruction was painfully clear. The roof had collapsed, the bells had melted, and the ancient stones were charred. Selby Abbey was little more than a shell. Now, when the officials looked over the remains of the abbey, it seemed this was one war that could not be won. But then something remarkable happened again. People came, not just from Selby, but from towns and cities across the country. They came to see the ruins, expecting to pay their final respects to a lost treasure. But they did more than just look. They left donations, coins, notes, promises to help. And slowly, stone by stone, the abbey began to rise again. Even the tower, which was long considered a poor imitation of the original, was rebuilt to match the grandeur it had once known. It's one of the Abbey's most remarkable tales, how from the ashes of loss, a community sparked resurrection. Now, as for how it started, how that fire started, well, the rumour has it that a workman left an oil lamp burning whilst he was building the new organ. We will never likely know for sure, and maybe it doesn't really matter, because what matters more is this time the phoenix really did rise from the flames.
Now this is saying it's a model of Selby Abbey Church as it was immediately prior to the fire of 1906. Behind me here is a 15th century font cover. Now this is one of the few things that actually survived that fire in 1906. It's still remaining here today. Now it's obviously being suspended, but I believe it's going to be replaced shortly, put into its proper place, that's what the sign says. Well, that is fascinating. I mean, that's really, really old, isn't it? The detail on that as well, incredible.
Selby Abbey is such a very special place. It whispers history and stories from the shadows, through the intricate carvings, and in its glass. Now this part of the video is definitely one for the treasure seekers amongst us, because I've heard that across the Abbey, tucked away in corners and peering out among shaded beams, the beady-eyed amongst us can find secrets, creatures, symbols, marks of mystery, history and meaning.
One of the things I'm absolutely loving so far about Selby Abbey is that it absolutely whispers history in every little corner and shadow. Starting off, for example, with the stone carvings. Now, if you look really, really closely at them, there's all sorts. There's animals in there, there's folklore in there. Now, this one, there's a little magnifying glass. If you peep, there's a little carving of the king, Edward VII, and there he is, just sort of hidden inside there. It's just so cool. I'm gonna try and show you. I'm gonna try. Oh, there he is. Can you see him? Yeah, I think you can see that. So there he is, just hidden in there. You have to look up a little bit high for this one, and this is the Selby Imp. Now he's that mischievous, devilish sort of creature that often pops up in cathedrals and things. Lincoln has a very famous imp. Selby's is not as commonly known, but he's still there, lurking. You see him?
At first glance, it might seem strange to find a mischievous little demon carved into the walls of a sacred place, but these curious characters were once common in medieval churches. Imps, grotesques and monsters were used not just for decoration, but to tell a deeper story. They were symbols, reminders that the church was a place where good triumphed over evil. In an age when people believed the forces of darkness lurked just beyond the light, these carvings represented that battle. To see an imp frozen in stone wasn't a threat, it was a reassurance. It meant that evil had been defeated, captured by the holiness of the space, and turned to nothing more than a warning in the walls. So if you spot him crouched and wide-eyed, remember, he's not there to scare you. He's there because he's lost.
One of the things that you can look out for at Selby Abbey is the Leper Squint. Now I believe they have two of these, but this one we've just come across, there's this step so you can go and have a look. It says, look down the Leper Squint, see how lepers were allowed to take their turn peering through the narrow 9 foot 6.5 inch long aperture. So there's some steps. We're going to have a look. Don't laugh if I fall. Oh yeah, I can see it. It's through there. Just through there.
In medieval times, leprosy wasn't just feared for what it did to the body, it was feared for what people believed it meant for the soul. It was seen as a visible punishment, a living mark of sin, and those who suffered from it were cast out from society, often forced to live in isolated colonies. Because leprosy was thought to be highly contagious, lepers weren't allowed inside churches. Instead, small openings, known as leper squints, were built into the outer walls, allowing them to catch a glimpse of the altar and hear Mass from a distance. It's a harsh reflection of the time, a moment of mercy shaped by fear.
I wanted to get this little part in because I know some of you viewers were interested in the history of World War II, the aviation side of things. So we've got memorials here at Selby Abbey. Now I had heard about this one. This is Cyril Joe Barton. Volunteering for aircrew in 1941, having trained in America, he began operational duties as a Halifax bomber pilot with 78 Squadron before joining the 578 Squadron based at Bern. On the night of the 30th of March 1944, he participated in an attack on Nuremberg. Short of the target, his aircraft was very severely damaged by enemy fighters, which forced 3 of his crew to parachute out. Despite this, and single-handed, he completed his mission before turning for home. Guided only by the stars, he flew his crippled machine over Germany and France to encounter further anti-aircraft fire when crossing the English coast near Sunderland. With all engines out of action, he took the gallant decision to avoid the heavily populated area by making a crash landing at nearby Ryhope Colliery, an act of heroism which was to cost him his life. His final words were of concern for the safety of the 3 remaining members of crew, all of whom survived their traumatic experience. So a posthumous Victoria Cross was conferred by King George VI in recognition of most conspicuous bravery. He was 22 years old at the time of his death. So it's really, there's this one here, and then there's another one here to David Wilkinson, Wing Commander. And then we've got a book here as well, which has got in gratitude to all airmen and airwomen who served in 578 Squadron, Royal Air Force based at Bern.
One of the most important features of Selby Abbey, so I've been told, is what is behind me. Now this is known as the Jessie window, and it is a replica of the one that was made in 1340, because sadly the original one got destroyed in that fire. But this has been redone by York stained glass artists, I believe. Now one of the things, there's a sign over there that tells me, that's why I'm telling you this, right at the top, don't know if you can be able to see it, you've got St. Michael. Now, St. Michael is weighing the souls of the dead in the doom scene, okay? Now, the devil, he takes sinners to the right, and angels take good Christians to heaven on the left. The Jessie window is a stunning piece of medieval stained glass, and it illustrates the family tree of Christ, beginning with Jesse, the father of King David, and branching upward through generations of biblical figures. It's a visual lineage showing Christ's royal and prophetic ancestry in glowing colour and intricate detail.
Just come across this grave slab as well, so there's a little bit of a sign about it. So it says this was the grave slab to Alexander, who was the abbot here from 1214 to 1221. This is the oldest surviving of the abbot's tombstones here, dating from the first quarter of the 13th century. I mean, that's just incredible. So this tomb was found in the south transept in 1867. This is the grave cover. It owes its good condition to the fact that it was buried for many centuries. Look at the engravings on this. The way it's been carved, incredible. To survive that length of time.
Close to the entrance of the abbey, tucked away in a corner, lies the tomb of Lord John Darcy, who died in 1411 at the age of just 34. At first glance, you might think its worn and damaged appearance is simply the result of centuries gone by, but this tomb holds a story with a sharper edge. You see, Lord John's descendant, Thomas Darcy, found himself on the wrong side of Henry VIII, which is something you do not want to do. He opposed the king's dissolution of the monasteries, and he played a part in the Pilgrimage of Grace rebellion, including surrendering Pontefract Castle to the rebels. Alongside that, he made no secret of his loathing for Thomas Cromwell, the king's powerful advisor at the time. It didn't end well, of course it didn't. On 30th of June 1537, Thomas Darcy was executed on Tower Hill in London for treason. And in the wake of that fall from grace, it's said this tomb here at Selby was deliberately vandalised, a symbolic act of punishment, a message carved not just into history but into stone and still here for us to see today. So what you're seeing is not just the passing of time, it's politics, it's vengeance, and it's a family name that once dared to stand in the king's way.
Now, Selby Abbey might sit in what some class as a quiet spot in North Yorkshire, but this is the part in the story where we dive into that meaning of it being on the global stage, in both a stained glass window and in that famous wedding. One of the most famous things that people come to visit Selby Abbey for is the Washington window. Now, I hear that this attracts a lot of the American tourists, and we've just spotted it. It's here, up here. You have to look quite hard. It's small, but there's an American flag next to it. Can you see? That's the so-called Washington window.
The so-called Washington window at Selby Abbey is a piece of 14th century stained glass. It features the crest of the Washington family, 2 red horizontal bars beneath 3 red stars on a white background. It commemorates the ancestor of George Washington, the first president of the United States. Now, while George Washington himself had no known connection to Selby, the Washington family arms were a recognised and legitimate coat of arms in England, and it's that familiar lineage that the window reflects. Now, over time, some have speculated that the stars and stripes of the US flag were inspired by this coat of arms, a connection that remains unconfirmed but visually striking. The resemblance is certainly there, but whether it was deliberate or just coincidental remains a matter of debate. What we can say for certain is this: a 14th century window intended to honour a local or regional member of the Washington family in medieval England now serves as a fascinating historical bridge, one that links this quiet Yorkshire abbey with the early story of America.
So for all the stories that are here at the Abbey, the one that really hit the headlines in 2015 on the global stage was, of course, the Taiwanese pop star wedding, Chou, and it happened here. Now, it was said to be such a fairy tale-like event, and they chose Selby Abbey because they thought it could be somewhere a little bit further away from the crowds. It looked absolutely beautiful, to be honest, and yeah, here we are standing in that very spot.
Once upon a time, not in a castle, but in a 1,000-year-old abbey in Yorkshire, a modern-day fairy tale quietly unfolded. In January 2015, without fanfare or fuss, Selby Abbey became the secret setting for a wedding like no other. The groom, one of Asia's biggest stars, Chou, the king of Mandopop. The bride, Hannah Quinlivan, model, actress, and the picture of a fairy tale princess. Cloaked in secrecy, the ceremony was kept so quiet that even locals didn't know what was happening until it was over. But once the photographs were released, showing the couple framed by soaring stone arches and glowing stained glass, the story spread across the world. Fans came, tourists followed, and Selby Abbey, steeped in centuries of history, found itself in the spotlight once again. Now perhaps this is fitting, because it's a place born from a vision, now home to a modern legend, because here it seems fairy tales don't just belong in the past. So that is it. That is the end of our wander around Selby Abbey. Thank you to everybody for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments if you visited before or if this is the first time that you've seen inside the Abbey itself. I'm absolutely gutted, to be honest with you, because I feel like I could spend a lot longer at this Abbey. I feel like there's so many more stories that I could uncover if I gave it even more time. But instead, I urge you, if you can, to come and visit it for yourself. It's completely free to enter. I believe it's open almost every single day of the week. And this place, it costs, I think it's on my website, about £1,000 a day for them to run, to keep the costs going. So I think it's important that we keep visiting these places, and if you do come, please donate as well to them. So a massive thank you as well to John, who is the vicar here, and to Andrew, who was the verger. He introduced us and showed us around a little bit. We asked him a few questions. So everybody's been wonderful here. Really, really grateful for them as well for giving me permission to film for you. So until next week, thank you again for watching. Stay safe, stay curious, and I'll hopefully see you on next week's episode.